Archie.
And I am Muskan, and today we are going to watch how Syrian extremists attacked US forces. So I think so it's a big mistake because we know that kind of power USA has, how they dare to attack on them.
Exactly, we have watched previous video once where these Chinese ship attacked one of the US Navy, and they were literally onto their bases and they directly attacked. So we got an idea of how powerful the US is. And also I have heard about the Syrian extremists, that there was a 13-year-old civil war where they were leading, and they are also very brutal and very dangerous in these cases. So yeah, I think so they have made a big mistake attacking these US forces. So yeah, let's get into the video.
At 0600 hours local time, F-15 Strike Eagles were screaming towards Syrian airspace with orders to erase 70 command posts from the map.
70 command
The extremists
posts.
who
Whoa.
attacked American forces last week think they're hidden. But in the next 6 hours,
Nobody can
American
hide.
pilots and artillery crews would discover something buried in that target list that intelligence analysts had been hunting for 3 years.
Oh, 3 years.
At 0647 local, the first F-15s crossed the border, and immediately, the weapons system officers, or WISO, eyes snapped to the radar warning receiver. Syrian Early Warning Radar, S-band, the kind that feeds targeting data
S-band.
to surface-to-air missile batteries. The pilot holds course. If that radar is feeding a SAM battery, they have seconds to make a move. 6 seconds, then the radar sweeps on. The WISO exhales. Deconfliction held. This time, anyway. But the deconfliction window was narrowing. Syrian air defense crews rotated shifts at 0700, 38 minutes from now. The incoming crew hadn't been briefed. Every minute past that deadline increased the odds of a friendly fire incident that would end the mission and careers. The Syrian desert now opens up. Ridgelines barely distinguishable from the 20 other sand-colored formations in the area. Somewhere in that emptiness, a network of command posts that had coordinated an attack on U.S. and partner forces last week stood. In just a few minutes, they'd be nothing more than smoking craters. In the lead Strike Eagle, the weapons systems officer, or WISO, the guy in the back seat who actually makes things go kaboom, brings the AN/AAQ-33 sniper targeting pod online. The infrared display settles on a ridgeline compound 40 kilometers out. Multiple structures clustered around a central building, and heat seeping from the vents that suggest exactly the kind of underground spaces the intelligence folks promised would be there. But matching coordinates isn't the same as being right. The APG-82 radar tells the WISO something is there. It can't tell him what it means. The desert terrain is unforgiving. Ridgelines smear into ground clutter. Structures blend into returns identical to rock formations. The difference between a valid command post and one abandoned 6 hours ago lives entirely in human judgment. The WISO cross-references radar returns against satellite imagery, compares thermal signatures to last night's reconnaissance, and asks the only question that matters: is this still the right thing to hit? A borderline shot wastes a $25,000 weapon on empty buildings. A wrong shot creates the kind of international incident that ends up on CNN the next morning. The calculus takes 5 seconds. 5 seconds where a 2,000-pound decision balances on pattern recognition and professional paranoia. The answers come back clean. This target anyway. But the WISO knows the target folder holds 69 more aim points, and not all of them can be hit by F-15s. But this one sure can.
Which one?
The WISO says one word: rifle. The GBU-31
Rifle.
falls away
GBU-31.
immediately and starts arguing with physics. Tail fins adjust 50 times per second, fighting wind shear and thermal gradients while GPS triangulates position to within 3 meters. If something's jamming GPS, which happens more than the Air Force admits, the bomb switches to inertial guidance. Less accurate, but 15 meters still gets the job done. The pilot rolls left. No need to watch. The Strike Eagle will be 15 kilometers away at impact. The tail kit gives the GBU-31 a glide ratio that lets it travel miles horizontally from high altitude. Stand off, drop, let geometry work. 28 seconds to impact. At 0648 local, the math completes itself. The impact registers on the targeting pod as a flash, then a bloom of gray that swamps the infrared display. 945 pounds of tritonal, converting a command post into an expanding sphere of overpressure and fragmentation. The blast wave travels at 26,000 feet per second through structures built to hide from satellites, but never designed to survive what satellites can guide. But there's no time to admire the work. The fuel gauges don't care about success, and the
No
target
oil.
folder still had 69 aim points waiting. By 0800 local, the Strike Eagles have made 19 more parking lots across Syria, but the target list isn't getting shorter fast enough. The problem is the terrain. GPS bombs are surgical when you're hitting a compound in open desert, but half the remaining targets are tucked into valleys where the margin between command posts and adjacent hillside is smaller than the weapon's accuracy. And some targets are showing thermal signatures that don't match the intelligence photos. Buildings that might be a valid enemy target might be full of civilians, might be empty entirely. From 25,000
looking
feet,
for
the sensors can
buildings
see
which
heat,
are maybe
they
empty
can't
or
see intent.
there are
For
enemies.
those targets,
Yeah.
someone needs to
They're
get
not
close
willing to
enough to
hold the
watch
civilians.
rounds impact and walk them onto target in real time. At 0900 local, two A-10 Thunderbolts push north across the border at
A-10
15,000 feet
Thunderbolts.
for
I know
targets
about them.
requiring eyes-on confirmation in terrain that would make a fast mover nervous. The Air Force brought the ugliest, most effective close air support platform ever built. The Strike Eagles have been working the target list for 2 hours, and results are visible from altitude. Thermal
Yeah.
blooms where command posts used to be. Secondary fire still cooking off in the mountain compounds. The A-10 pilots aren't there for them. They're like the hunting dogs sent in after the first shots when the prey knows you're coming.
Yeah.
The lead pilot descends toward a ridgeline position that showed up on the target list as probable weapon storage, requires visual confirmation. At 8,000 feet, the targeting pod resolves the details. A reinforced structure built into the hillside, ventilation pipes suggesting underground storage, and the
Oh.
distinctive thermal signature of a building that's trying very hard not to be seen. But here's the
Oh,
thing about the
let's
Gao
see.
8 Avenger.
Yeah.
It
You
fights
cannot
back.
fight.
The 7-barrel rotary cannon produces nearly 5 tons of recoil, enough to slow the aircraft by 20 knots, enough to shove the nose around if you're not ready. The Air Force didn't mount a gun on an
Jet you
airplane.
saw a video
They
about.
built an airplane around a gun and spent 40 years teaching pilots how to wrestle it.
Most useful
As
for
the
the
pilot
low-lying
closes with the
terrains.
target,
Yeah.
they're thinking about how they're going to handle the thing. This is because the gun itself is mounted 2 feet left of center line, but the firing barrel rotates to the 9 o'clock position when it shoots. That puts the active barrel exactly on the aircraft's center axis. 40 years of pilots have been aiming down a gun that isn't where they think it is, and hitting anyway because the engineers already thought of everything. The pilot rolls in, nose dropping toward the target, airspeed building. At 6,000 feet, the Pipper, the aiming reticule projected onto the HUD, settles on the bunker entrance. Then,
And then boom.
70 rounds per second of depleted uranium and high explosives tear through the air. The human ear unable to separate the individual shots. The cockpit shakes. The airspeed slackens. The pilot holds the trigger for exactly 2 seconds, then releases and pulls off target before physics becomes the enemy. But somewhere on that ridgeline, a militia fighter had spent 3 days camouflaging his SA-7 position. He'd watched 2 Strike Eagles pass overhead without engaging. Waiting for the slow, low target his Soviet-era manual promised would come. The A-10, engine noise echoing off the canyon walls, was exactly what he'd been training to hit. That's when the missile warning receiver lights up. Launch detection, bearing 170. Something just came off the rails. But here's the thing about manpads like the SA-7 Grail. It uses
Okay,
an
these are
uncooled
manpads.
infrared seeker designed in 1968. It chases the hottest thing in its field of view. Back then, that was always the aircraft engine. But
Now
the
what will be the
SA-7
hottest?
can't distinguish between hot and hotter. It just follows whatever's
hot and
brightest.
hotter.
The pilot's hand hits the flare dispenser. What tumbles out
Wow,
burns at
smart
2,000 degrees. The A-10's
It will hit
turbofans
the
run at maybe
flare dispenser.
600. To that seeker, the flares don't look like a better target. They look like the only target. The missile turns, away from the aircraft, into empty sky. That launch signature just lit up every sensor in the battle space. The manpad's position, that was hidden, just requested a visit from 30 millimeters of attitude adjustment. The A-10 rolls back in. But the gun has its limits. Some targets are too far for a diving pass. Hidden in terrain where descending means flying into canyon
It's
walls.
difficult.
For those, the pilots carry these. The weapon you see here
And you
is
also
called
have
an
to, like, save yourself
AGM-65
with
Maverick,
your target as
and it
well.
solves a problem the gun can't. The infrared
What?
seeker in the missile's nose stares at the world in shades of heat. And when the pilot slaves it to a target, the seeker locks on with the determination of a weapon that has exactly one purpose in life. The pilot doesn't need to dive into the weeds. He designates from 4 miles out. A logistics building sweeping warmth through its thin metal roof confirms the seeker is tracking the right thermal plume and squeezes the trigger. The Maverick does the math from here, accelerating off the rail and writing its own guidance to impact while the pilot is already setting up for the next shot. By 1000 hours local, the A-10s have serviced 11 fixed positions using a combination of gun passes and missiles. The target list is down to 42. 3 hours left until the window closes. But even warthogs can't circle forever. Fuel states drop, pilots fatigue, and the A-10's greatest strength, getting slow and low, means each aircraft can only cover so much ground before the tanks run dry and they have to break off for the tanker. Somewhere in those mountains, extremists who have spent the last 4 hours hiding are listening to the engine noise fade, counting the silence, calculating whether they have time to move assets and disappear before the sound comes back. They're about to learn that silence doesn't mean safety.
Whoa.
Yes.
The M142 HIMARS, High Mobility Artillery Rocket System, may look like a very angry Penske truck, but don't let its appearance fool you. Inside are 6 GPS-guided rockets capable of reaching 50 miles with accuracy measured in
6
single
rockets.
digits. Aircraft need fuel, pilots need rest, but the target list doesn't care about human limitations. At 10:15 local, 3 HIMARS launchers are positioned in the Jordanian desert, 15 miles from the Syrian border. They haven't moved in 4 hours, haven't fired. The crews have been monitoring aircraft positions, watching Strike Eagles and Warthogs cycle on and off station, waiting for the moment when geometry and timing align. That moment is now. That's because the problem with sustained air operations is math that's just slightly harder than Common Core. Aircraft burn fuel. Fuel means tankers. Tankers mean transit time. 20 minutes off station for every refueling cycle. 20 minutes where target coverage thins out. Mission planners stagger the rotation so there's always someone overhead, but gaps are inevitable, and gaps are when people who've been hiding start thinking about moving. HIMARS exists to fill those gaps with enough high explosive to reconsider that decision. The crew receives coordinates from the Tactical Operations Center, a staging area in the desert where ISR has been tracking activity for 30 minutes. Assets are being prepared to move when the extremists think it's safe. They're wrong about that. The launcher elevates its pod. The fire control computer confirms the solution. Traditional artillery needs survey teams to precisely locate the gun position before it can shoot accurately, a process that takes hours and leaves obvious signatures. HIMARS doesn't. The launcher knows exactly where it is via GPS, calculates its own firing solution, and can set up on any flat patch of dirt and start delivering ordnance within 5 minutes of arrival. No preparation, no
Nice.
registration fees, just coordinates and consequences.
Yes.
The rocket leaves the pod with a white-hot plume, shoving the round into the morning sky. Flight time to target, 90 seconds. The launcher's already
90
displacing
seconds.
before the rocket reaches Apache, or highest point. The HIMARS crew has a saying: shoot, scoot, or become a statistic. That's because rocket artillery is
Shoot, scoot, or
loud,
become
bright,
a
and
statistic.
traceable. The
Nice.
launch plume is visible for miles. It doesn't take a college degree to figure out where you are. Anyone with 2 ears and a stopwatch can detect the launch, calculate trajectory backward to origin, and drop rounds on the spot before the shooter can displace. With mortars, you have maybe 90 seconds. The launcher is already 1,000 meters away when the first mortar rounds impact the firing point. 4 rounds, tight grouping, about 300 meters where the HIMARS was. Keyword: was. American
Was.
artillery crews practice displacement until it's muscle memory. That mortar team just expended rounds they can't easily replace on a patch of empty dirt.
The US
And the
has
counter
way
battery
higher
position,
military
it just moved up
practices
someone's
than
priority
Yeah,
list. By
definitely.
1100 hours local, HIMARS has fired
11 in
12
the
rockets
morning.
into 4 target areas. The target list is down to 31 aim points. What's left are the hard ones, and HIMARS can't touch them. The rockets are accurate to single-digit meters, devastating
Wow.
against staging areas and vehicle
Accuracy
parks,
level 99.9%.
useless against a bunker entrance that's only visible from one specific angle. Some targets are buried so deep in canyon terrain that a GPS weapon might hit the ridge above instead of the door below. Others need the kind of shot placement that no unguided rocket can deliver. Not somewhere on that building, but through that specific window at that specific angle right now. For those targets, you need something that can hover behind a ridgeline, peek over the top, and put a missile through a doorway from 4 kilometers out. The Forward Arming and Refueling Point, or FARP, exists on no map and will be gone by tomorrow. 72 hours ago, this was empty desert. Now it's fuel bladders, ammunition pallets, and 2 AH-64 Apaches sucking down JP-8. The Army calls this expeditionary logistics. The pilots call it a gas station with hellfires. At 11:15 local, the first Apache lifts off and immediately drops to 200 feet, hugging terrain that would give a fixed-wing pilot nightmares. The helicopter doesn't climb, it slides forward, using ridge lines and wadis as cover, rocks and scrub rushing past beneath the canopy. There's no radar threat out here, no missiles waiting to lock on. But there's still some highly motivated and wildly inaccurate dudes with machine guns and RPGs, so the crews still take precautions. At 200 feet, you're in a range of everything, including harsh language. The ZU-23 opens up from a ridge line 800 meters out, twin barrels pumping 23mm rounds at 400 per minute. Soviet surplus that was already obsolete when disco was cool. But 23mm doesn't care about its age. But here's the ZU-23's problem though. It's optically aimed at an acoustically detected target. It's basically like trying to shoot an insanely fast clay pigeon with a very large machine gun. The gunner is shooting where the helicopter was, not where it is. The rounds go wide by 30 meters, close enough to spike the pilot's pulse, but not close enough to matter. But that dust signature and muzzle flash just became the most obvious thing in the valley. The TADS locks on before the second burst. The laser paints the Technical's engine block. 4 seconds later, that position is spare parts scattered across the hillside. The Apache's primary weapon for engagements like this is the AGM-114 Hellfire, a laser-guided missile designed to destroy tanks and remarkably good at destroying everything else. Each helicopter carries 16 of them, but the Apache's secret weapon wasn't the Hellfires. It was the gunner's eyes. Magnetic sensors track the gunner's helmet 60 times per second. Turn your head, the TADS turret follows. Look at a target through the chin bubble, the 30mm chain gun is already pointing at it. The boundary between human attention and machine attention doesn't exist. The gunner's eyes are the targeting system. At 11:40 local, the first target appears on the thermal display. A hardened bunker built into the hillside 4 kilometers out. Its entrance visible as a dark rectangle against warm rock. The intelligence package says weapon storage. The thermal signature, heat seeping through the ventilation despite attempts to mask it, confirms someone tried very hard to hide what's inside. The pilot holds the aircraft in a hover behind a ridgeline, like your dog peeking over the dinner table, just the rotor mast and sensors sticking out. The gunner centers his crosshairs on the bunker entrance. The laser activates. The Hellfire comes off the rail and begins riding reflected laser energy. 8 seconds where the gunner holds crosshairs steady while the missile adjusts 40 times per second. 8 seconds doesn't sound like much until you're stationary over hostile territory. Helicopters survive by moving. A hover is an invitation. Impact. The bunker entrance disappears in a flash that blooms white on the thermal display, followed immediately by secondary explosions that confirm the weapons inside were exactly what intelligence promised. The Apache was already sliding left, repositioning for the next shot, and this time it doesn't even need to see the target. The wingman can laser target from one angle while the shooter fires from another. The Hellfire just follows the laser reflection regardless of who's painting it. Targets that think they're hidden from one direction might get hit from a direction they never saw coming. Cooperative geometry. The helicopters hunt as a pack. 2 more Hellfires, 2 more positions eliminated. This is the work the other aircraft couldn't do. The close, precise, discriminate shooting that requires Mark I Mod 1 eyeballs at 200 feet instead of sensor feeds from 5 miles up. By 1200 hours local, the 2 Apaches had returned to the FARP twice for rearming. 11-minute turnarounds, no hangars, no maintenance bays. At 12:30, the final aim point gets serviced. A JDAM from a Strike Eagle on its 5th sortie of the morning. The bomb falls for 31 seconds. The compound that was there is now the perfect space for a Buc-ee's. The Wizzo then checks the target folder. Winchester. Bye for now.
Wow.
video, and I am a big fan of the planning, the artificial intelligence the US Army does. I guess US has a plan and they have a backup and they have a backup for their all over the plans. I was very impressed how not a single person or not a single jet helicopter was even touched or destroyed by the Syrian experts.
Yeah, and also I think so this was like quite long war or fight, I could say, because it started with 6 in the morning and till 6 to 12, so it was quite long. And also they were like trying to hide the weapon, but you cannot hide anything from USA.
Exactly, and I was very impressed how they have targeted all the hit lists, and they were continuously back and checking the hit list, the target setups and all. So yeah, let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. So like, share, and
Subscribe.
bye.